second meeting of the Council on Climate Solutions for 2024. The 25th, I couldn't believe that number, 25th meeting of the council overall. And this, our last meeting was April 2nd of this year. You may remember that we gathered, but in an unofficial capacity at the climate conference, which was a big hit earlier in the year. And we met with the MAC-EJ, that was May 16th. For those who don't know me, Phil Roos, Director of Eagle, I guess, chair of the Climate Council. I'm going to start by taking attendance here. If you could, hopefully people can hear me remotely or in person. I'm sure they can hear me, but we have a small crew here. I'm going to read off names that you can say present, or we'll note the dead silence as the fact that you're not here. Frank Beaver.
I am present. Good afternoon.
All right, good to see you, Frank. Tim Boring. Director Boring from MDARD. Are you sitting in for?
He wasn't sure if he'd be able to make it virtually, but if he's not, then I guess.
Okay, John, John's here. We'll mark that as present. Director Bowen from DNR, I know is not going to be here, but we have Scott Whitcomb here. Thanks for joining us. Director Corbin, I have declined, is not able to be here, but Susan, please let me know if you're there somewhere. Harry Dugan.
Present, sir.
Oh, good to hear that voice. Director Eubanks. Okay. Jim Harrison.
I am present.
All right, Jim, thanks for coming. Looks like Director Hertel may not be here, but Aaron Ferguson, maybe?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great to have you here. Brendan Hoffmeister. No Brendan? Okay, Marnese Jackson. Okay. Kevin Kolvar from Dow. Phyllis Meadows.
Present.
Oh, good to hear your voice, Phyllis. Quentin Messer or Steve Bacal from MEDC. We'll take anybody from MEDC. Anybody here? Okay. Grace Nishienzi. I'm saying that wrong, am I?
Present.
Okay, thanks, Grace. If I only say it once every 4 or 5 months, you know, I can't be judged for getting that wrong, but I am sorry. Heck, are you here?
I am. Good to hear your voice.
What a stalwart. Same. Tanya Pozlowski.
Present. Good afternoon, everyone.
All right. Glad you're here. Thanks, Tanya. Lana Pollock. No, Lana? Chair Scripps.
Chair Scripps will be joining a little bit late, but I'm here to support him until he's able to join.
Okay, appreciate it. Who is that? I can't see.
Hi, Jill Rusnak, his advisor.
Okay, thanks, Jill. Sam Stolper.
Hi, Phil. Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks, Sam. Darrell Slaughter. Sorry, I jumped past you. How could I do that?
No problem. No problem. Good to hear your voice, Phil, present.
All right, thanks, Darrell. Brad Weifrick or Niles Anilin. Anybody from MDOT? Okay. And Cynthia Render Williams.
Present.
Okay, and I think you have a colleague here, right?
Yes, Steve Henderson.
Steve Henderson, okay. All right. That's our attendance. Thank you all for joining, those who could.
Chairman,
first order.
Sorry, Rachel Eubanks has joined. Apologies for missing my
thank
spot
you,
in roll
Rachel.
call.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Did I miss anybody else? Okay. All right, our next item is to adopt the meeting agenda. It should have been sent to you a few days ago, I think on Friday. Could I have a call? Could I ask for a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
I'll move, Darrell.
Thank you, Darrell. Any seconds? Who is that?
Cynthia.
Thank you, Cynthia. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the agenda. Any discussion on this? Okay, those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion is adopted. We have approved the agenda. Now we'll do the same for the April 2nd meeting minutes. Those were also sent to you last Friday. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes from that last meeting?
I move.
So support
Sam.
Harrison.
Okay. Can anybody tell who that was?
Sam, that was Sam, sorry.
Oh, Sam. Thank you, Sam.
That was my
Anybody-
first time I ever did that.
Yeah, I know. You really broke the ice there. Trend to come here. Anybody else? Anybody willing to second that motion?
Support Harrison.
Okay, Jim Harrison. All right, we've moved it and we've seconded it. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. We've approved the April 2 minutes. Okay, I'm just going to say a couple things about the agenda for the meeting and just maybe some context behind this. I'm going to talk a little bit about the focus for Eagle and the council here. If you think about what we're trying to accomplish in 2024 as a department, and then by extension, the council, there are three big things. Implementation of the My Healthy Climate Plan. We want to meet or beat the goals as they're outlined in the plan. Second thing is implementing the 2023 legislation, the climate and energy legislation that was passed last fall, and the fiscal year 24 budget. And then number three, pursuing federal funding. And boy, has there been some pursuing federal funding. So a lot of success, great progress to announce there. All of what we're going to talk about today is focused on those priorities. And I want to provide a little bit more framing here. I want to talk for a second about Eagle's Vision 2027, which is our plan to, over the next two and a half years left of this, to establish Michigan as clearly an enduring national leader in environmental protection. So a couple things to say about that. First is there's a real focus on actual impact that we're having on the 10 million citizens of the state. So we're changing some of the way that we're measuring success. I'm talking in general now, and I'll get to how this translates to the work on climate. We're also talking about a somewhat broader, more expansive definition of the ways in which we have impact. We have the environmental protection, regulatory programs, but we also play a role in what kinds of businesses and economic development we encourage, as well as helping communities to thrive. And by extension, those three things are also really important to the climate effort. And the other thing we're doing is, for the first time, we're really talking very explicitly about climate being a key priority within Eagle. In order to achieve that vision, we've done a couple things. First, we've asked all of the Eagle program areas, including the Office of Climate and Energy, which is responsible for driving statewide implementation of the climate plan, to set stretch impact goals. And we're benchmarking those relative to other states. And so what we have done recently, we had an outside consultant working on this, is we went through a process of developing some metrics that we're going to track related to climate. This is sort of a subset of a much larger group that are spelled out in the My Healthy Climate Plan. But just wanted to share with you, because I think PAC-PU and others have brought this up in the past. What are we measuring and how are we keeping track of success? Because we got a lot to do in a short period of time. So included in those, I'm just going to share a few of them, but we're measuring greenhouse gas emissions in a couple ways, both directly from energy and then overall greenhouse gas emission reduction. We're tracking renewables deployment as well as EV charging station and hydrogen station deployment. we've got a few metrics that are related to just proactive elements of climate policy. Like one of them is that we actually track greenhouse gas emissions. Not every state has been doing that historically. We're one of the first. We have a state energy efficiency scorecard that we're tracking relative to other states. And then we're looking at the economic development aspects of climate and energy. What's been the increase in clean energy jobs? I can say that in a recent ranking, we were #1 in the country in new jobs created through clean energy. And then, percent increase, and then also the number of clean energy jobs. So that's a subset of some bigger things that we're tracking overall that are embedded in the climate plan. Sorry, did somebody have something to say? No? Okay. All right, so you're going to hear, that's the sort of general framing, why we're here, what we're trying to accomplish, how we're measuring success, how we're tracking ourselves relative to other states. And then we're going to start off the rest of the program here with Corey and the Office of Climate and Energy to share their work in implementing the My Healthy Climate Plan, including an update on major fundraising that can be deployed, and particularly the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. That's the last of the major recent big awards that we as a state have gotten through the great efforts of Office of Climate and Energy and so many others. In the last, going back to May, I think it's somewhere north of $500 million in new money. And the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants, which Corey's going to talk about, was $129 million. And all that work, all of what went into that was really deeply informed by the work of the council and other stakeholders as part of all the stakeholder groups that were held by the Office of Climate and Energy across the state. And then we're lucky enough to have 2 other presentations by others to highlight climate work that's led by other parts of state government, DNR and MEDC. And we have leaders from those 2 departments that sit on the council. First, we're going to have Scott Whitcomb from DNR give an overview of the ongoing Michigan the Beautiful initiative, which some of you have heard about before. And I think we do a little piece on this. Yeah. And at the Climate Council, certainly. So we'll get an update on that from Scott. That's really integral to achievement of the My Healthy Climate Plan goal of protecting 30% of Michigan's land and water by 2030, so that we can really leverage natural solutions to capturing GHG emissions, and at the same time keep our recreational opportunities, protect biodiversity, and a number of other things. And then the second one is going to be MEDC's Let's Grow Michigan initiative, led by Hillary Doe, who's our state's chief growth and marketing officer. And we're going to hear about the Let's Grow initiative, which is an initiative to engage Michiganders in the goal of boosting the state's population. And there's some polling related to that is going to be shared. And a little hint for those who haven't heard as much of the output from all the work with Let's Grow Michigan, is a heavy emphasis on leveraging the idea of Michigan as a national leader in climate, in addressing climate. So we'll hear about all of that. We're going to spend some time giving council members a chance to share how they're helping implement the My Healthy Climate Plan today, and also to do questions and answers. And that's it for me. I'm going to hand it off to Trevor Drake of GPI, who will be helping us to facilitate the rest of the meeting. Over to you, Trevor.
Thanks, Director Roos. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Trevor Drake with the Great Plains Institute, based out of Minneapolis, but we've had the privilege of supporting the state of Michigan with its climate work for a number of years, including helping to facilitate these council meetings, and great to see so many familiar faces. I'm just going to act as sort of an MC for the meeting. I'll rely on Director Roos and Corey to spot if folks have questions in the room. I'll keep my eye on hands raised or items in the chat for virtual attendees, and I will also try to keep us on time. We have a really nice agenda, so I'll try to keep us flowing. So without any more, I'll hand it off to Corey to give an update from the Office of Climate and Energy.
Hey everyone. good to see you all and see some of you in person and hear many of you. As Phil mentioned, as the director mentioned, I will give an update on also climate and energy, and then you're going to hear from me for a little while here because we're going to dig into the climate pollution reduction grants as well. So, get ready for a lot of hearing me talk. So Phil already went through the agenda. In terms of the quarterly update, which is really, you all may have grown accustomed to this, where we try to come to this meeting with a set of data, metrics that are economy-wide, as well as more qualitative programmatic updates. This quarter, as you heard, we're doing quite a bit of work on benchmarking internally. We're also digging deeper into our greenhouse gas inventory, and then we're going to develop out some additional metrics as we prepare for the end of the year annual report. So we won't have some of those deep dive metrics this month, but we're going to focus largely on programs and programmatic implementation. But we expect to have more robust data-based analysis in the future, and I know that's something that folks have asked for. A couple of quick notes just before I dive into some of the programmatic pieces. I think you all have been, obviously have gotten these updates from us regularly. I think you know that we have focused at our office and across state government around capacity building, bringing home federal resources, mobilizing as many actors as we can. You'll see that across a bunch of the programmatic updates, those themes. But one of the other things that we've tried to do, and it's taken longer to get there, is some of the priority actions that were identified as a part of the climate plan really make sure that we're mobilizing and targeting those initiatives. And that's what the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program was exactly about. And we're excited to be able to share that because it comes directly from all the input of this body, as well as a number of other folks via public comment, et cetera. So that's a little bit of a precursor, but I'll go ahead and get into some of our quarterly updates here for programs. If it will advance. There we go. A little bit of a lag. All right, so our My Healthy Climate Core program, I think we've talked about this often in these meetings. We're finishing up our first cohort. We have at least a couple of folks I know in the room today that are part of that cohort, but we've got folks all over the state of Michigan. And it's been truly wonderful to see them add capacity, both at state government, local government, and nonprofits. And we still have some time left on that one through November. And we are currently recruiting for our second cohort. So this is first of many asks for you all during these meetings. Please promote this. Members can apply by September 8th, but we're currently recruiting for 32 members. You can see the breakdown here, 9 municipalities, 8 state agencies, 10 nonprofits, 3 academic institutions, 2 organizations that support tribes. We're really excited about the diversity of organizations, geography, theories of change. It's not all just nonprofit environmental groups. It's really a lot of folks that this might be the core work that they're doing on climate might be facilitated by adding this staff capacity. So we're really excited about it, and we do want to get as many applicants as we can. I think we had, Jordan can correct me, but I think we had, like, as of like yesterday, already had 40 applications.
We're well over that now.
Yeah. So we're already at, we had 40 a couple days ago. We're probably getting close to 100 already, and we've seen an incredible amount of enthusiasm for the program. And then we've worked really hard to be sort of a flagship program for the American Climate Corps with the Biden administration. And we've had some of our members featured at events, and one of them even introduced the president on Earth Day. I don't know if we've updated you all on that, but it was pretty exciting for them and for us. And so we're posting these positions via the American Climate Corps as well. And so I think that's even boosting even more applications. So very excited about that. And again, please, if you're able to share with folks in your networks and encourage folks to apply. We've been kind of blown away by the interest, but also the talent and caliber of the folks that we've gotten. A lot of folks making career pivots, a lot of folks thinking about kind of how to dive into this space. some folks thinking about how this is their kind of calling at the moment, and that's been really wonderful. And our team, Jordan from our team, has been doing a ton of work on this and leading this work. And anyway, hopeful that we get another 32 incredible folks. Another update. So I don't think we've spoken about this in detail since we got the award, because it was timed sort of right before conference. But we had programming at the My Healthy Climate Conference. But the state of Michigan received the Michigan Solar for All Award through the Solar for All program under the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. We're awarded $156 million. We are entering the planning period for that. We are currently hiring for a program director and should have that sorted in the next by the end of September. And then we are going to have a planning consultant, which we should have an RFP available in the near future. But this program is a pretty transformational one to help get low-income households and disadvantaged communities access to residential solar, residential serving solar, community solar, energy storage. And unique to this program, or relatively rare for programs like this, there is a significant investment in home repair dollars that helps address some of the issues that we've talked about here often in planning around climate action in the built environment, around upgrading homes and businesses such that we're able to actually install renewables and do electrification and increase efficiency. So very excited about this opportunity as well. And we should have a ton more in terms of planning opportunities, program rollout about a year from now, but with a ton of engagement and stakeholder meetings along the way. And I don't.
Just a quick question. Where can we point people to if they want to apply for that position?
The position has been posted, and we are actually in the process of final selections right now. So for that position, we will have additional positions available that will be a part of that team. But the director position we had posted, and it is now the application is closed.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, thanks for bearing with me on the slides. For some reason, I'm getting a weird delay. All right, so next item here, the Justice 40 Accelerator Program for Michigan. This is a program that we're currently selecting 25 community-based organizations. Applications already went in. We had 90 plus applications for 25 slots. These folks will get technical assistance and support. Is very much a foundational piece to our strategy around building capacity to implement the climate plan in a just and equitable manner. So we've been working on this in partnership with Elevate Energy and the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition, as well as the Office of Environmental Justice Public Advocate, to make sure that we have partners in communities all over the state of Michigan with capacity to actually help us deploy things like that Solar for All program, but also for them to have the capacity to apply for federal grants on their own. So that we should have more to roll out on that soon once we announce the cohort. But right now we're in the selection process with a number of community-based organization volunteers that are helping evaluate those proposals and select the cohort. I will get through these quickly because the CPRG is going to be a lot in a second. But community change grants has been a topic that we've talked about here. $2 billion program supporting community-based organizations in partnership with the Michigan Infrastructure Office, the Office of Environmental Justice Public Advocate, and the Office of Climate and Energy. We worked to develop out support and technical assistance to get as many coalitions to apply out of Michigan as possible. The rolling applications are through November, but our understanding is that the deadline, that there is overwhelming demand for this, and it is unlikely that there will be funds available come November, or there will be very limited funds available come November. So we've already seen about 20 organizations, or 20 coalitions apply, and that's directly a result of the Climate Justice Challenge, the partnership that OEJPA, our office, and the Michigan Infrastructure Office put together out of the Competitiveness Fund to provide voluntary matching grants for coalitions that apply early for that program. We should be starting to see award announcements on that on an ongoing basis over the next weeks and months. The National Clean Investment Fund will be back with a lot more updates on this and the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, which is the next slide. The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is at 27 billion, 7 billion solar for all, 14 billion is the National Clean Investment Fund, and 6 billion is the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, which is on the next slide. I'm not going to get into all the details here, but we've been doing quite a work to liaise with all 8 of the sub-recipients for these various funds, which collectively they all represent a total of $20 billion. And we've been working hard to make sure that they see Michigan as a priority place to be. Folks might not have seen this at the climate conference, but we actually had 5 of the 8 coalitions represented there, and they had kind of their own special kind of receptions and discussions and things of that nature to try and make sure that they understand Michigan as a place that they should be bringing these resources and helping us reach folks that haven't had access to a lot of these technologies in the past. And again, we will have a lot more on that. So a quick update on the fiscal year 2025 budget and the My Healthy Climate Plan. Over $500 million to implement the My Healthy Climate Plan, including a whole variety of things in here. You can see funding for Michigan Saves in the energy bucket, along with a large program with FLEO there. So this is cross-cutting across all departments. And you can see this continues to be an organizing framework for budget conversations and also clear priorities around a variety of the goals in the My Healthy Climate Plan. One legislative update that we want to make sure folks don't miss is the Homeowners Energy Policy Act. This has been a long-standing thing for folks that have been following this around homeowners associations and the ability to install solar in those scenarios. It has been a point of contention for a long time, and we're excited to see it addressed to help give folks easier ability to install solar for households that are in homeowners associations. Finally, just a reminder, the 2-year anniversary of the IRA was last week, and we've been doing an incredible job led by the Michigan Infrastructure Office, but as an all of government approach around bringing home federal investments. And a ton of the IRA funded programs and opportunities here are very much climate related and aligned with our climate plan. So I will pause quickly before going into the CPRG, but I realize I am, I think, a little bit behind. No, I'm right on time. I'm fine. So I can pause for more than a quick moment if anyone has questions or follow up.
James Harrison, you've got your hand up. Please go ahead.
I do. Thank you very much. Corey, any part of the slide deck available to send to council members so we can take a little deeper look? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Corey.
Thanks, Jim. Other questions from folks? And Corey, I'll ask you to spot questions in the room. My eyesight through the camera lens is not quite that good.
Yep.
All right, seeing none, I think we can go on to the CPRG update.
Wonderful. All right, so I provided a little bit of context before. We'll walk through the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, what it is, how we got here, how it fits with the My Healthy Climate Plan. But this is really, I've said it a few times internally to our team, probably even here, that this program is the backbone to our office and the continued work of implementing the My Healthy Climate Plan because of the planning grant nature of it, and very specifically, Julia Field and Jordan Power on our team are both staffed because of it, and that has added a ton of capacity on climate. Also, kudos to both of them for all of the work that they did on the application process for this, and we'll get into more of the fruits of their labor in a second. So the overview of the program, it's 2 phases. We've talked about this, the $3 million planning phase that is ongoing. We received that grant along with corresponding grants with the Grand Valley Metro Council, Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, and Michigan's 12 federally recognized tribes. Some of the tribes received individual grants. The Michigan Intertribal Council received a grant as well for planning, and then we supplemented their grant to help make sure that the Michigan Intertribal Council could cover all 12 tribes and help facilitate input as we developed out our plan. And so we continue that collaboration with all of those entities on an ongoing basis as a part of the planning process. We developed a priority climate action plan, which was the first phase. So it was really building directly from the climate plan, identifying priority actions that needed to happen immediately, and this tied directly to the phase 2 competitive grants. We are moving into the comprehensive climate action plan portion there of our planning grant. You can see that it's due December 2025. We'll have a lot of information on that coming up. But then phase 2 is what we want to focus on right now, which is the competitive implementation grant. So the structure of that was, it's $4.3 billion for states and other local government entities to apply. The tribes had their own competition, but could compete in both categories. We understood the assignment to be identify the #1 priority that needs to happen to implement the climate plan, and that we won't be able to do without. And that's what we focused on. The priority climate action planning process ties to this in that you couldn't apply for a competitive award unless it was included in an applicable priority climate action plan. So local government, local government, tribal government, consortium of governments, state government could not apply for something that was not included in a priority climate action plan through the Grand Valley Metro Council, Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, one of the tribes, or the state of Michigan's priority climate action plan. So that was sort of the overarching framework for that. And so the priority climate action plan is an important piece. So how did we arrive at the priority climate action plan? We really built from all of the conversations we've had here around the My Healthy Climate Plan, the stakeholder groups, the work group recommendations that were the result of many, many meetings and a ton of work of this body, even before I was in this role. And so that was like a really strong starting point. We were lucky. A number of states didn't have anything to work from. We were pretty far ahead in terms of having all of this input and work done. We then added and deepened analysis, quantitative analysis through a preliminary greenhouse gas inventory that was released with the Priority Climate Action Plan, and we'll be getting into a more comprehensive greenhouse gas inventory as a part of the broader long-term planning process. And then we undertook additional public engagement. So we went across the state and had engagement meetings, which I believe we talked about, and I saw a number of folks on the call there at the various meetings across the state. And we also had public listening sessions and input opportunities and some asynchronous opportunities for folks to submit priority greenhouse gas reduction measures. So out of that, we identified a set of measures. Then we took those measures that were priorities based off of all of the input and quantified them for greenhouse gas emission impact, community benefits, and other EPA requirements. All of that went together into a priority climate action plan that is released and available on our website. So it is not a replacement for the climate plan. It is a next step phase building from the climate plan work. So what was in the priority climate action plan? Because of the nature of this, we had to focus on emissions reducing sectors. So electricity generation, commercial, residential, buildings, transportation, industry. It was meant to be a prioritization. So around things that are near term, we did not include natural and working lands in the priority climate action plan in prep for the competition, and justice considerations while a pillar in our climate action plan, in our My Healthy Climate Plan. There wasn't like a structure in the EPA's framework for that. So it was actually a cross-cutting feature with the low-income disadvantaged community benefits analysis and as a part of all the stakeholder input. So still very much a feature of the process, just it doesn't have its own section the way that our My Healthy Climate Plan does. So I mentioned, our understanding of the assignment was pick the thing that is the highest priority for meeting our climate goals. We applied around a program that I'll describe in more detail in a second around really solving the siting challenge in the state of Michigan across a variety of planes, and we'll dig into the details of that. But we went all in on that strategy and that approach, and really made the case that it was the most important thing for us to actually hit our 2030 targets, was to figure out how to deploy renewables at scale and address a number of the challenges and barriers identified during the stakeholder process and identified by experts and industry throughout the process. So you can see there, we were one of 25 selected awards, close to 300 applications nationwide. Of the individual state awards, you can see a very few number of those yellow state go it alone award applications that were successful. A number you can see on the East Coast that were coalition applications, a few localities. But we were really proud of this, and I will tell you, we're convened with all of the other states that were applying. So we've been working in partnership with them and kind of like comparing notes along the way with probably about 40 or so other states, all of which submitted applications. And so I think there were a lot of folks that weren't very happy with this outcome, but luckily in Michigan, we're very pleased because we really do think this is crucial to meeting our climate goals. So the pillar, so I got a little bit ahead of myself on the content there, but the priority that we applied around in the competitive portion was to get to our 60% renewable target by 2030 and to meet the goals of the recently passed clean energy legislation, which is a 50% renewable energy standard by 2030. So that plus all the public input and everything we received really highlighted this as a foundational piece to meeting all of our goals, not just in the electricity sector, but we're looking at electrification across parts of industry, parts of transportation, parts of buildings. And so this is a foundational kind of linchpin approach to all of our priority actions by 2030. And somehow I've managed to forget how to advance slides. So I apologize with whatever is going on with me here. Anyway, so the program that we applied, around $129.1 million awarded. It is for the Renewables Ready Communities program. So folks will be familiar with the Renewables Ready Communities Award. That pilot program received $30 million in the governor's budget previously, and we're rolling that out currently. And then this broader program that encompasses that is meant to take a more holistic approach across a few planes around siting renewables at scale and really hitting those targets. So the major features are that Renewable Ready Communities Award pilot and the expansion of that pilot. And we asked for the funding sufficient to take the pilot all the way to that 60% target. That is so we really scaled it to really be sized for our My Healthy Climate Plan goals. Creating a brownfield renewable energy pilot program. I've got a couple of slides on these, so I won't go into too much detail, but that'll be the first and kind of most robustly funded such pilot program that we've had at the state level. And then we have a Renewable Energy Academy to help educate local stakeholders and decision makers, funding on workforce, because we can't do any of this deployment without additional training for workers and resources there. And we're partnering with LEO, the Department of Labor and Opportunity, on that programming. And then the last piece, and this is the part that would stay with Office of Climate and Energy, is developing out a Renewables Ready Communities strategic plan for utility scale and brownfield renewable energy projects. So we'll be coming back with that as we move forward. But just taking a quick step back to remind folks of sort of the theory of change for our office and team is we're not going to run this program. We are going to help coordinate and drive action toward this policy objective that is, the North Star pillar of our cleaning the electric grid portion of the climate plan. And so we'll keep this planning period portion, but departments within Eagle, other parts of state government will actually be deploying all of this and doing this work. So we will keep that planning portion, and we will be coming back to have conversations with you all during that process as well, to think strategically about how we hit those 60% targets. The last part here, but certainly not least, thanks to input from Michigan's federally recognized tribes, as well as the Michigan Intertribal Council, we did carve out $10 million for renewable energy projects in tribal communities. We're very excited about that. We believe that it has some flexibility and an opportunity to really drive renewables adoption to the benefit and direction of Michigan's tribal nations. So digging into what's next here. So next steps on the program, we're currently in a planning phase here. In January, we'll be receiving the actual EPA funds will be dispersed. The expansion of the Renewable Ready Communities program will be going through winter 2025 and then be generally available over time, along with the Renewable Energy Academy and some of the work with LEO. And then the brownfield pilot will launch in spring, summer 2025. So digging in a little bit more into the details of these different features of the program, the Renewables Ready Communities Award, we had the $30 million budget allocation in 2023 as a pilot. We built off of that pilot and explicitly referenced it in our application to expand the offering. So it's the awards are up to $5,000 per megawatt to municipal hosts and permitters of eligible grid-connected renewable energy projects. You can see the size considerations here. This is really to try and drive at scale renewables deployment and to really work with and provide resources to communities that are choosing to host at the local level renewables, utility scale renewables and storage projects. The Renewable Energy Academy complements that. So we have funding through DOE, thanks to the great work of Julie Stavelin's office and the team here at Eagle in getting the DOE's RSTEP funding, which is dedicated toward solving some of these siting of renewables challenges. And then we will expand on that, on the work of that award to create a broader kind of one-stop shop for utility scale renewable energy planning, zoning guidance, and technical assistance. And that's in partnership with the entities listed at the logos you can see there. And a lot of that's long-standing work that's being expanded upon or elaborated with those groups. The current RRC awards, so again, this is the current pilot, just a little bit of an update on what we've seen so far, but we're expecting that with this announcement of the CPRG program, the rollout of the RRCA awards just recently happening, and the ability to say that this is available across the state for any community that is interested in pursuing these projects and hosting utility scale renewables, we expect even greater uptake. So, and you can see this kind of like, it might be slightly confusing. So the awards are really designed to be an incentive for local governments and communities to host renewables. And then what they choose to do with the awards is at their discretion. So you can see some of these that are directly tied, like rooftop solar installations and energy efficiency improvements in a community, while others are looking at things like a local streetlight upgrades or road improvements, things that are priorities for their community. So it's providing resources to communities based on what they want and need, and is meant to add additional revenue for communities that choose to host these at the local level. The Brownfield Renewable Energy Pilot Program, this is $10 million program over the course of the 5-year grant period. It will be providing funding for brownfield projects at a utility scale that we are hopeful will help unearth more detailed strategies for long-term investments in brownfields sited renewables projects. And so really looking at, I've said this here before, and I think it was a part of our climate plan and our priority climate action plan. We're looking at siting renewables on greenfields, brownfields, rooftops. We're trying to figure out where and how best to do it to meet that 60% target. This is kind of the primary way that we're looking at the brownfields investments.
Hey, Corey,
So-
just wanted to do a quick
Yep.
time check. It is 2:46. I see Sam has a question as well.
Sam, I have like 2 slides and then I can.
Yeah, and I
go
don't
to
need to ask a
questions.
question if we don't have time either, or I can put it in the chat or something. Whatever. Go ahead.
All right, so quickly, just to close out, we have the second phase of the planning grant, the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan. We're doing a ton of work on that and should be rolling out more engagement on that this fall and in the winter in January. And we'll be getting additional input on each pillar of the climate plan and thinking not just about immediate actions that need to happen to get to our 2030 targets, but also immediate actions that need to happen to get to our 2050 targets. What do we have to start on now? And we'll be digging in there and looking forward to that further engagement. We have a variety of requirements for the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan from the EPA. All of these pieces will be included as a part of that Comprehensive Climate Action Plan that's due in December. We'll certainly want input from this group, and we'll be back with a number of opportunities to engage. Namely, you can see here, we're going to be doing over the next stretch, we're kicking off the engagement with a environmental justice related session to gain input and make sure we're really thinking about process and policy as a part of this. We'll do some virtual public input sessions. We'll do some stakeholder input on pillar goals, and then we'll close out with an additional environmental justice meeting to kind of cap it off to get additional input there. And you can see there will be technical and GHG related analysis going on throughout. And we're going to try and sync up some of this program with our climate conference. So that is the conclusion of my slides. We will be back with many updates on the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan and progress on all of the things we covered across the OCE update as well as the CPRG award that we received. But I can pause now for questions before we turn it over to I turn it back to Trevor.
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, let's take a few minutes for questions. Sam, please go ahead with yours.
Okay. Thanks, Corey. Thanks, Trevor. I was just going to ask whether we know anything about like the denominator of available brownfields. Like, is that, how big can that be as a source of our like utility scale renewable deployment versus rooftops and whatever else is in the priority list?
I don't think we have that exact data. I think that's actually that strategic planning process. That's one of the questions we want to dig into is like, what is that available resource and how do we prioritize that vis-a-vis other areas where we could be citing renewables? But it's a great question.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks, Sam. It looks like Tanya, I love how Teams kind of shows just the order. So Tanya, you buzzed in first, and Peck, you were shortly after that. So we'll go in that order.
The team's updates coming through. Corey, I just want to congratulate you and your team on all of the work that you've done here. I'm really, really impressed with the amount of investment that you have brought into the state that's supporting so much incredible work, and really appreciate the community focused efforts that have been part of that and the equity and justice that you all have promoted as part of all of this work that you've done. So I just want to give a shout out and say congratulations. It's really, really incredible.
Well, thank you, Tanya. I definitely asked her to say that.
Peck, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to second Tanya's congratulations to Corey. Just awesome, all the things you got going there. Something I think would be really valuable, and you might already be doing it, and I might have even missed you mentioning it, given all the fire hose of great things going on, is packaging all these in an easy way for people to see everything, in a pamphlet, say, as well as online. But I think it'd be good to have something that is professionally crafted to really get everyone excited about what you're doing. And I think if more people see it, it could really help get more wind in our sails. And, distributed at the Climate Summit coming up at the end of September. It'd be really great to have a stack so everyone left and said, holy cow, look what Michigan is doing. It's great to see that, we're the number one from the IRA number, but it's so much better to see all these examples of what it's really turning into. So great job.
Yeah, thank you. And totally heard on the literature and materials and some of the communications pieces. I think we've got some things in the works, but would love to chat more about and hope to have more to share soon.
Thanks, Beck. Lana, let's go to you. And then I think after that, we'll move on to the next section of the agenda.
It's not really fair that Lana talks next, because she's got that lake in back of her. Is that what that is back there? Oh my God.
Lana, looks like you might be muted on your end.
She's still muted. Up at the top. Who knows if your computer's up there.
Got it. I was doing it on the little bottom. Yeah, the lake is great. I just saw a huge storm blow through, come across the lake. If I were raised here in this spot, I would have been a meteorologist for sure. But okay, my question is, I don't want to have a downer because this is just fabulous. I mean, I did not know, I did not appreciate this brief, all that has been done already and is in the works. And like everybody else who's spoken, I am very impressed and pleased. I have two things. One is, and I think it'll just have to emerge eventually. I'm really interested, not surprisingly, in more information and possibly more efforts or focus on brownfield development and how this can be helpful in that way. I see some of it, and I really, of course, am just becoming familiar with this, so there's lots I don't understand yet. That's an interest. The other thing is the question. The question is, how much of this is already baked in so that if we didn't have the same legislative support in the next 2 years, would this be able to continue? State legislative? And if not, I mean, I hope that as much as is baked in so that it can't be unrolled, reversed. Maybe that's a question for Phil. I don't know.
I can take a crack at it, which on the first one heard, and we took a note, and we'll make sure to follow up on the brownfields pieces as they emerge. On the second one, I think that's a constant question for us, and would welcome guidance from this body on that, of like how to make sure that this work sustains over time. I do think that the federal funding sources, those programs are finite programs, many of them. But they're funding to the state of Michigan. We expect that to continue regardless of future priorities and such. In terms of other pieces of like baking it into more institutionalization or something, I think that's an ongoing question. I think something we're very interested in ideas around, but I can hand it to Phil if he has anything else he wants to add on that.
No, just that's that institutionalization that you're talking about is a priority across all the climate work within Eagle, across all state government, at all levels of government and communities around the state, to make this really sticky, no matter what political winds might blow one way or another over time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if we're an advisory council and I'm a single voice on this, I would say the advice is to pursue it so that it can't be a come and go. Gee, that was nice last year kind of thing. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lana. And thanks, Corey, for both of those updates. And I couldn't agree more with what folks have said. Just since we work with other states, I think throughout the nation, folks see Michigan as a leader. Thanks to all of that great work. So next up, we have a presentation on the Michigan the Beautiful initiative. And do we have Scott? Is Scott Whitcomb or Sarah Nelson available?
Yeah, they're coming.
You guys want to?
Okay, they're on their way up.
They're 3 inches away from being on camera here.
Right. We're gonna set this back a little bit so we both can be seen. Thanks for having us here today. we were invited to talk about the Michigan the Beautiful project that we're working on as part of My Healthy Climate, but we would be remiss if we didn't touch on some of the other climate initiatives that DNR has been working on for the last 5 years or so. So we jumped at the opportunity to talk a bit about what we've been up to and how it fits in. So if you'll allow us to do that, we'll jump right in. I brought one of my colleagues, Sarah Nelson, who's going to highlight some of the work that she's been critical part of, but we'll jump right in. So I'm Scott Whitcomb. I direct the Office of Public Lands. I'll tell you a bit more about that. But we sit in DNR's executive division, really looking at the entirety of our operations and how climate intersects with that. And Corey, I think I'm having the same problems you are with advancing the slide.
Are you on slide? Slide? No. Is it?
Are you trying that?
Didn't try that one yet, but hey, there we go. All right, thank you. Now we're up to speed. So stepping back about 5 years, when Governor Whitmer came into office, her administration really looked at an all-hands-on-deck approach towards climate across all of the state agencies in the cabinet. And there were a number of executive directives and executive orders that spoke to this. And this was even before the creation of the council and the My Healthy Climate Plan. So Director Eichinger, who is our former director, really saw an opportunity here for DNR across our entirety of our operations. And so when you think about climate and all of those sectors like transportation and buildings, obviously natural and working lands, DNR, because of our facilities and land footprints, really has a stake in all of that. And so we looked at our entire operation as well as our public lands to see what the opportunities were here. And so we really do. We lead with our facilities and our land. And if you're not familiar with the department, we're the largest landowner in the state of Michigan. We have 4.6 million acres of public lands that we manage. And so a lot of agencies work across the state. We actually have all of those programs, but we're also managing our own lands on behalf of the residents of the state. And so you're probably familiar with our 103, soon to be 104 state parks. And our largest state forest system in the country at close to 4 million acres. We also have wildlife areas scattered around the state, over 13,000 miles of trails, over 1,000 boating access sites, and 6 fish hatcheries. So we have a huge footprint across the state, a lot of facilities. We have over 1,000 buildings. Those 6 fish hatcheries account for about 15% of our total power consumption. It's very intensive because of moving that water around. And so when we're looking at what we can do as an agency, we're really looking internally as well as externally across what we do. Oops, there we go. And so part of it is mitigating for climate change, and we're going to talk about some of that. Part of it is those adaptations to a changing climate. As we manage natural resources, the forests, the water on that state land, that 4.7 million acres, we really have to consider climate, and we always have. When you think about it's climate that informs the animals we have here, the wildlife, the trees and the plant species that we have. And so our managers have always been considering climate, much the way in the agricultural community, it informs what crops will grow here and are best suited for this area. But as we think about a changing climate, the climate in the past was more stable, more predictable. A changing climate is unpredictable and often widely varied. And so we have to make plans that work along a continuum of change. And when you look at our overall mission and everything involved with that, those parks, the infrastructure, the trails, our forests, the recreation that we partake in here in Michigan, even the protection of those cultural resources, every aspect of that mission could be affected by a changing climate. When you think about our roads and trails potentially washing out with more extreme weather events, our forests being beset by pests that are often not native, recreational activities. We don't have the snow sports that we once did. And so even cultural resources being affected by extreme weather events. We really, as we're thinking about how we manage these resources, we have to factor in climate. And that's one of the things we're working on, is building a more durable and lasting climate policy. So as this administration comes to a close, and whatever administration we get in place next, that policy and those procedures are baked in. So we're trying to build that durability into the future. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk about some specific climate actions that we're taking in the state. Then we're going to come back and dive in a little bit more with Michigan the Beautiful and some of those things that are around that.
Thanks, Scott. So as Scott mentioned, climate has always been a factor in the work that the Department of Natural Resources does. But over the past few years, we've been looking at our work and integrating climate action into that work in a variety of innovative and new ways that differ from the ways that we had integrated climate in the past. So these are some of the activities that we are doing for climate mitigation. We'll get into energy efficiency and renewable energy, those two parts of our energy transition, in a moment. We also work on forest carbon. So we partner with Mass Timber at MSU, the program led by Sandra Lupian, to advance mass timber use in the state of Michigan. And also for forest carbon credits, Michigan was the first state to enroll state forest lands into a carbon market, and that's the Big Wild Project. It's over 100,000 acres of state forest up in the Pigeon River Country State Forest. And so when we look at this, we're looking at how we manage forests in new ways. And we're also looking at the products that are traditionally thought of as being coming out of our state forests, and looking at new products that could possibly be taken to market, such as carbon credits. On mass timber, we're also working on the first mass timber facility to be built from Michigan timber, and that's up in Newberry. And so you can see a couple photos of that on the slide. We're very excited about that, groundbreaking for mass timber in Michigan. And we're also exploring geologic carbon sequestration and what that could look like and what that could mean on state lands as well. For adaptation and resilience, I think that this is work that has been going on probably a little bit longer in the department. Several of the divisions have worked on climate vulnerability assessments and management and adaptation planning. And then we also manage a number of state-owned dams and are working to remove some of them. And so by doing that, we can restore our rivers and wetlands' natural function and some of the services that they offer for flood resilience, flood storage, things like that. And what was mentioned earlier about leadership in state government and making sure that some of this work endures. And so there are several things that the department is doing in that realm as well. We did develop and established a department-wide climate policy and an EV policy. And so now we're looking at different parts of operations and policy that could also be updated to include climate considerations. Our divisions have also integrated some climate planning into their work and into various plans that they have. We have 2 department-wide core teams that work on climate issues. So there's the climate core team and then also an energy transition team. We have representation on a number of national climate groups. So the US Climate Alliance, the Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center, AFWA has some climate groups as well, and even some international climate delegations. So there's been work with the United Kingdom around Michigan the Beautiful, and with Finland around mass timber. And so when we look at the work that the DNR is doing for climate action, it not only has relevance here in Michigan, but also national and even internationally. So now we'll get into our energy transition, which I think is probably one of the parts that relate most directly to the My Healthy Climate Plan. The first step of our energy transition is to lower our current energy usage at a variety of our facilities. And so we have begun conducting energy audits on some of those facilities, prioritizing the highest energy users first. We're doing some simple upgrades like upgrading lighting to LED, things that are simple but can have big impacts cumulatively. Also looking at upgrading HVACs, improving the building envelopes, so roofs, windows, things like that. One of the areas that we've had a lot of movement in the past few years is behind the meter renewable energy. So currently we have about 25 active solar sites throughout the state that are on DNR owned facilities. And I think the biggest, the most impactful of those is those solar arrays at hatcheries. So 5 of our hatcheries have a total of 7 arrays that are going to generate about 876 kilowatt hours annually. So that will cover about 16% of the usage at those facilities on average. And when all is said and done, they should bring in about $2.5 million in savings to the department over 25 years. So we're looking at projects like that are opportunistic when we happen to have funding come up. We also had a series of power purchase agreement sites that when we did not have funding available, that was something that we looked into. And of course, the monetary returns on those is lower, but it still offers a lot of energy savings and sourcing a lot of our energy from renewables. We're also, as part of those HVAC upgrades, we're exploring geothermal on some of those at our facilities. We have some of our state harbors looking at using a small amount of wind turbines to power, in particular, the ice clearing that they have to do in the winters. And then also we have 6 electric vehicles being used in state parks right now, some electric mowers and chainsaws, and getting staff used to those so that we can start transitioning more of those, as well as charging stations that are both public facing and then also kind of behind the gate. But we currently have charging stations either currently in or in the queue for 22 state parks. And we're looking for opportunities for the next group of that infrastructure. Another area that we're looking at is utility scale solar. And so we've seen this time and time again, as was mentioned, that the My Healthy Climate Plan and also the Power of Public Lands strategy prioritize the use of brownfield sites for utility scale solar, and our Groveland Mine project, which is a 120 megawatt project in Dickinson County, is a really great example of that. It's an old decommissioned mine. And we're also looking at the rest of state lands to see where we can find that sweet spot where utility scale generation is possible because of proximity to transmission lines, but also minimizing impacts on negative impacts to wildlife and other natural resources. We also work on best management practices for solar installations for wildlife. Dr. Chris Hoving has done some really great work on that. And also Dr. Chris Hoving works on the threatened and endangered species permitting for utility scale solar in the state. So we've had a big role in that as well.
All right, thanks, Sarah. So now to Michigan the Beautiful, which is in the My Healthy Climate Plan in the natural working lands and forest products sector. Michigan the Beautiful is a part of that. It's also known as 30 by 30. And it's this notion that by protecting 30% of our lands and waters, we're providing climate benefits by naturally sequestering greenhouse gases. And we all know that there's a lot of co-benefits that come along with that. Outdoor recreation lands. We can look at things like biodiversity, equitable access to the outdoors, public health even. So a lot of different opportunities in the way we look at our lands going forward. So 30 by 30, or as we call it, Michigan the Beautiful, and this is sort of a play on the Biden administration, America the Beautiful. So 30 by 30 is a global initiative. America the Beautiful is a federal initiative geared towards protecting 30% of our land. And here in Michigan, we refer to it as Michigan the Beautiful. And so far, our planning process has involved DNR, and we've partnered with the Nature Conservancy. Really with this goal of conserving, connecting, and restoring 30% of our lands and waters by the year 2030. So when you think about that, it's really a simple thing. It's 30% by 2030. And yet how you do that and what lands count towards being conserved and where should they be, that's where the details come in that we need a lot of stakeholder support and input from. So what we're doing is we're looking at not just public lands, but private lands that are conserved through a variety of means, conservation easements. We're looking at things like farm bill programs that conserve lands and waters and put money into the private sector, into voluntary conservation measures. And again, we're looking at those secondary benefits. It's more than just about land conservation, although at its core, that's what this is about. But we know that there's community health and well-being benefits from having green spaces close to where people live. We can look at how these lands are spread out across the state and providing more equitable access to nature. We know that having these lands available in the public sector makes local economies thrive, as well as those climate benefits. Go too fast. Here we go. So what we're doing is by the end of the calendar year or shortly after, our goal is to provide a strategy where we can point to those opportunities to collaboratively conserve and connect and restore Michigan's lands and waters, create a tool set that shows where we are now with land that's conserved, look at a variety of voices and hear what folks have to say about the whole spectrum of conservation activities in Michigan to empower forward action across all categories, not just land ownership, but other things that we would do to fund conservation in the state. Really looking at that broad view, not limited to permanent protection, but looking at some of those those temporal things like farm bill programs as positive towards climate objectives. And so we recognize that whatever we come up with here, it has to be right for the state of Michigan. And this isn't just an accounting exercise where we get to 30% and we call it good. We know that distribution of public lands and other conserved lands are not equitably distributed across the state. If you look at this map of our great state, you see there's probably more forest lands in the northern part of the state that are in public ownership and thus conserved. There's fewer lands in southern Michigan. We probably have a greater representation of forests and grasslands or wetlands or prairies, that type of thing. So we can always improve, no matter where we are in the state, that access to public lands and the distribution of these lands that are so important for all of us as well as for climate mitigation. We really want to hear all of the voices. This isn't just about the conservation community. This is really something that all Michiganders, we hope, can get behind, because the outdoors, nature, and the lands that really sustain us are really critical to the entire state as well as our cultural identity. And so we're in the process right now. We've contracted with public sector consultants and the Nature Conservancy. We're gaining input. We're having some stakeholder engagement sessions where folks can go and make their voices heard. We've enlisted the help of an advisory group to help set those priorities, which lands we should be counting towards conserved. And we're creating some tools to understand where these lands are located, how many acres we have in these different categories, with the goal of creating a pathways report saying where we are today and where can we go by the year 2030 to achieve our objectives. So by the end of the calendar year, we hope to see a report, a pathways document showing where we can be, a viewer where we can see online where these lands are located. And really, this will form sort of the first step of a process that we can hand off, and it can be implemented across all sorts of different organizations can have a hand in implementing different aspects of this. And so just taking a step back, when you look at what we've done as an agency, sort of our statewide reach with natural resources, both our lands and our facilities, and that desire for permanent policies and procedures that support climate action and considering things like energy and how we use it, we decided that although our agency was getting some wins, we were getting some things across the finish line, things like the first ever forest carbon project, we really wanted to build some more a little more sustainability, a little more durability with what we were doing. And so we took the carbon credit money that we got from that project, and we created the Office of Public Lands, which is a group of people that work horizontally across our agency, working on things like policy procedure, facilitating things like My Healthy Climate, to again integrate it into the way we do business. So no matter what happens in the future, our public resources agency that's thinking about our natural resources is considering climate, both mitigation and adaptation, in the way we do business. And so we've been putting some energy into this. And right now we're looking at that public land base for some higher level outcomes. And you think about how our public lands are managed, our wonderful parks, our state forests. Some of the traditional outputs are outdoor recreation, wildlife habitats, and things like that, forest products from our state forests. But as we consider these lands, we really need to be looking very strategically at our public lands, to be thinking about things like climate, like Michigan the Beautiful. Can we use these lands for renewable energy, and how do we work those lands into the transition that we need across the state? How do we use wetlands to sequester carbon? And also, how does the outdoor recreation industry fit into this in the use of these lands? And even things like more sustainable river systems by removing dams where it's appropriate. So we're working across all of these pillars right now, really to try to future-proof our agency and considering climate and energy in everything we do. And I'll leave it right there and answer any questions that anyone may have. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Scott and Sarah, for the excellent presentation. Really nice to learn about all the work that you've been doing. Quick opportunity here for questions from council members. I am seeing none online. Are there any in the room?
Corey.
I have a comment, which is just that they are one of the inaugural hosts of one of our Climate Corps members, which I'm thrilled about. And then Mass Timber, who you all mentioned, who you all have worked with, they are going to be in this next cohort. So just connection to the Climate Corps program.
Yeah, the Climate Corps has really helped us expand our capacity. And we've done a lot of outreach with our member, and it's been really, really positive for the entire agency. So it's really getting that message out and amplified. So thanks, Corey, for that program.
So that's awesome.
All right.
Well done. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Scott and Sarah. Well, let's go on to our next presentation. This is about Let's Grow Michigan from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And let's see, I think we have with us 3 folks from MEDC. I'm seeing Hillary Doe, Olivia Vaden, and Daniel Arini. And Olivia, I see your name here, so I'm thinking that I'm handing it off to you.
Yeah, that would be great. Can you see me? For some reason, I can't see myself, but it's really no big deal either way. Okay.
We can see you.
Perfect. Yes, thank you for that. And I think you're controlling my slides, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for having us. I hope we're all, staying cool today. I'm Olivia Vaden. I'm the Director of Policy and Research for the Growth Office, the Michigan Growth Office, the newly minted Growth Office. Today, I'm just going to be talking with you about, how the Growth Office came to be, what we've been up to, and our climate strategy, which is newly developed, still being developed. And later on, our My Healthy Climate Corps fellow, Daniel, is going to be talking about the work that he's been doing. Daniel's been instrumental in guiding us in our climate strategy. So I'm excited that he's going to be able to present to you all today. Next slide, please. Great. Although the Michigan Growth Office is newly established, this work has really been going on for over a year now. When Governor Whitmer announced the Growing Michigan Together Council in June of 2023, the Growing Michigan Together Council was a bipartisan council that was tasked with coming up with a set of recommendations to kickstart growth in our state. And at the same time that she announced the council, she also appointed Hillary Doe, Chief Growth Officer for the state of Michigan. Hillary is not only the first Chief Growth Officer in the state, but she's the first in the country. Michigan is the first state in the country to have this type of position. And it's really kind of our way of saying, we might not be the only state dealing with this population loss, but we are going to be the first state to be very public about the fact that we're going to do something about it. Next slide, please. At the heart of our work so far has been public engagement and national polling. The work of the council was really embedded in that, and the working groups who supported them. Lots of independent research and peer state comparisons informed those recommendations that we are now trying to implement against. Most recently, we had a public engagement event in Detroit with public sector consultants doing the Michigan Beautiful work. And so I think that's just a great example to show how all of this is really connected, and it's going to take a group effort to get the job done. Next slide, please. Yeah, so let's walk through a high level look at what we've gained from this effort so far. I know we're a little bit crunched for time, and I want to make sure Daniel has time to talk at the end as well. So I'll try to get through this. Next slide. So, we've seen Michigan's population growth break away from national trends. The ramifications of this slowed growth is why the Growing Michigan Together Council and now the Growth Office were created. You know, we're trying to understand this trend and to partner with folks like you all to solve it. The ramifications are clear, you know, labor market challenges and revenue stagnations, and those challenges sort of just build on each other, and we end up in a bit of a loop. Next slide, please. In too many ways, you know, we see signs that the healthy growth cycle is breaking in Michigan, unfortunately. Like I said, we're kind of stuck in this loop. When you have negative net migration, which we do have in Michigan, it leads to these labor market challenges, which leads to lower revenues for the state to spend on critical services across the state. And ultimately, that leads to declining community well-being as well. And so what we want to see is Michigan getting back to this healthy growth cycle of vibrancy, strong tax revenue, and public investment to make sure that Michiganders that are here already and future Michiganders have what they need to reach prosperity. Like I mentioned before, our population growth trends have slowed, and with that has come this low employment growth. And, you know, each of these issues have long-standing implications on their own, but taking them together is really what we're seeing today. And it has a lot of impact on our future growth projections. Next slide. Thank you. This didn't happen overnight. We always like to remind people, and it's not one agency's fault. We also like to remind people, or administration's fault, but this is our reality. We are an out-migration state. We do not attract enough people to make up for the population losses we experience annually. We struggle to attract and retain the most mobile populations, which are younger populations. And with that, you know, loss of talent, the talent gap, that's loss of businesses, loss of revenues. And like I had showed you before, we're on this kind of depressive cycle, and we're really trying to break that. Next slide. Thank you. But in short, you know, we're aging faster than our neighboring states, and this leads to the projected labor market declines that we've talked about and increased pressures on our public services like our public health system. And if we don't do anything about this trend will continue, and it will continue to compound on itself, and it'll be harder for us to get out of that situation. Next slide. You know, along with population trends, like that's really our goal, is reversing net migrations, but we also look at things like median incomes across the country as an indicator of growth. While Michigan's median income was once over 100% of the national average, we now have a median income that is well below that national average. We rank 34th in median income among US states. And we like to use this chart. It's not a happy chart by any means, but it really does show us, you know, in 1980, thinking about the industry that was here in 1980 in Michigan, 5 of the top 10 highest earning cities in the country were located in Michigan. And in 2016, that wasn't the case. And today in 2024, that's not the case. Michigan's lower than average wages are driven in part by, you know, the major shifts in manufacturing and job growth in these like lower paying sectors. Our low median incomes are because of the transition to lower wage, like health and social assistance sector jobs, you know, like a home health aide or a paid caregiver type of job, like very critical job, but unfortunately very low wage. And today, 6 in 10 jobs in Michigan pay less than low middle class wages. Next slide. This is just reiterating what I just said, but we look to these median incomes because of what they can indicate about a state. And our research has shown that our peer states that we compare ourselves to, that their higher median incomes tend to also have higher in-migration, more robust knowledge economies, and higher educational attainment. Next slide. Oh, I guess I'm just a slide ahead of everything. But here's that in a graphic. Next slide, please. We also look to education, both expenditures and outcomes as a metric of growth. You know, Michigan's education spending fell from 8th in the nation to 31st from 2007 to 2001. And, you know, although the 2023 budget boosted Michigan's education spending to historic per pupil levels, the impact of 15 years of declining education spending leaves us with levels of education proficiencies and attainment that really struggle to compete with our growing peer states. Next slide, please. And you can see that here in this peer state comparison, Michigan ranks in most of the time 4th or 5th or 6th in many of these categories. Excuse me. And we know that this matters, we know it matters for growth, but also for our community well-being and our shared prosperity. We want everyone to have access to the opportunity they want. And we know that bachelor's degree attainment means lifetime earnings that are nearly double that of the average graduate, and the average graduate only with a high school diploma. And so we know that the well-being of our economy, our communities, and our people is tied to the educational success of Michiganders. And so focusing on these outcomes here, whether it be because of funding, whether it be because of supports in the classrooms, a myriad of things, is important for our future growth. Next slide, please. And, we see similar trends in our infrastructure across the state. Despite recent improvements and significant investments, our infrastructure is crumbling and facing growing threats because of the changing climate. This was pulled from the infrastructure report card, and although Michigan's scores have gone up across the report card, there's still plenty of room to grow, pun intended. Next slide, please. And although Michigan enjoys a relatively low cost of living compared to other states, we lack the amenities and housing to attract young talent to our cities. Like I said before, improvements have been made, and that is great, but we do have more work to do. Young people have told us time and time again that they're seeking cities that are amenity rich, robust, transit heavy, and we have some work to do to get to that spot. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Again, funding changes over the last few years. Temporary funding, has bolstered infrastructure spending in Michigan, but upon the expiration of these sources, we'll have to figure out a sustainable funding mechanism for future infrastructure. And I know some work is being done in that area right now. But a high quality of life really depends on high quality infrastructure. Michigan has unparalleled access to fresh water and natural beauty. I know I don't have to tell any of you that, but ensuring that our residents and businesses feel confident investing in a future in our state really requires safe roads, accessible transit, and water systems that deliver clean water and flood protection. Next slide. Since 2000, Michigan has spent substantially less than other states on infrastructure. This chart shows the average capital spending per person per year in inflation adjusted dollars between 2000 and 2021. Michigan's average spending over this period is about $842, leaving us ranked 47th among all the states and well below the US average of 1,305. And so just another representation of how the outcomes that we see and kind of the path that we got here is very clear, but there is time to do something about it. And with the growth office being created, we're really saying that we are going to do something about this. Next slide. To sum it all up, faster growing peer states tend to have higher educational attainment, they have growing median incomes, and they have these walkable, dense transit rich communities. And that is time and time again what folks have told us they want to see in their communities. And so we're focused on implementing those Growing Michigan Together Council recommendations to ensure that we're prepared to accept that talent. Next slide. And now, that we know where our gaps are, we can really do something about it. The council focused on transformational strategies that really redefined how we grow businesses that provide high wage jobs, educate our kids, educate the future generations of Michiganders so they can succeed and innovate in this economy and create thriving, inclusive places that are really magnets for that young talent that I keep talking about. These strategies provide a blueprint. That's why we call it the blueprint for growth, for creating a Michigan where anyone can get a world-class education that provides them with future-ready skills needed for high-paying jobs and have places where employers and talent want to be. A strong education system leads to the development of a strong talent pipeline for the 21st century economy. And in order to attract employers and keep our college graduates in Michigan, we need places where people want to settle down. And, you know, I know many of us think Michigan is great, but we can do a better job at telling the world how great we are. Next slide, please. Taking all of that together, you know, we can reverse our net migration. We can have a positive net migration in the state. And with that will come increased measures in median income, degree attainment, and our migration, which really sets the foundation to making Michigan a top 10 state for growth by the year 2050. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about, you know, what the growth office has been up to this year. As I said, we are officially newly created, and so we've been, you know, kind of laying the playing field of what we're going to be doing in the next year. And then I'll give it over to Daniel so he can talk about the great work that he's been doing. Next slide, please. We really see this as a, you know, three-pronged approach. We think that, you know, using pilots and programs to test some of these ideas in the wild, making sure that, you know, what we're spending our time and money in is really going to reverse our net migration. And with that, we hope some of the information that we gain can be used for policy reform to ensure that we're setting our state up for success for the future. And with that, storytelling and this perception shift really goes along with that. And I think, you know, the Michigan the Beautiful work, I think, is a part of that as well. Unfortunately, sometimes we get the reputation of being old and cold. And although we might not be able to, you know, change the weather in the middle of winter, Michigan has a lot to offer, and we can just do a better job at telling that story. We can put, you know, the microphone in the hands of the region so they can tell their story as well. There's great work being done in this aspect, and I'll touch on it in a minute. Next slide, please. Speaking of programs, this year, we launched 2 programs, Make My Home, a regional talent retention and attraction pilot program. Make My Home, the application for that program has closed, but we're in the process right now of reviewing applications. Make My Home is, you know, first of its kind program. We're putting the microphone in the hands of the region so they can tell us what they need to attract talent. They can tell us what their value proposition is. We're really excited to be able to announce the winners of those grants in September. And then also happening right now, the applications are open for Pitch Me, which is a statewide startup pitch competition, a Shark Tank style pitch competition. And this year's theme is mobility. They're really seeking innovative solutions that transform the way Michiganders move. And so, yeah, if you have a great idea, if you know someone who has a great idea, those applications are open until September 16th. Next slide, please. And when it comes to storytelling, you know, we've all seen the You Can in Michigan ads, the award-winning You Can in Michigan campaign. And what this campaign does a really great job of is pulling together the different aspects of what it means to be a Michigander. And I think, you know, future iterations of this, different campaigns that will be coming out in the years to come will really help us tell our story better. We know how great Michigan is. It's just time that we make sure that the rest of the world knows what we've always known. Next slide, please. And I'll just breeze through this really quickly. One thing, when thinking of policy, one thing that we know, sorry, I got distracted by a notification that came up. One thing that we love to talk about is this year's budget and how many of the things that came out in the budget this year directly align with the goals that we're trying to reach. You know, first and foremost, investing in talent and growth to ensure that we can continue to do this work. We can bring stakeholders together. We can continue our public engagement work. Next slide, please. And then the key investments in innovation, the innovation fund, and the new technology and mobility projects, these all directly align with strategy 1 from the Growing Michigan Together Council to ensure Michigan is a hub for entrepreneurship and innovation in the future. Next slide. These investments, education investments to increase access and opportunities for all Michiganders. There's several here that directly are aligned with what the Growing Michigan Together Council had suggested. And so it's great to see that work come to life in the budget cycle. Next slide. And, finally, some great things came out of the budget to ensure that we can create those thriving communities, those amenity-rich magnets for talent that we have been talking about so far. Next slide. Okay, now on into like the fun part, I think. Climate and talent. And, as the growth office continues to work with our partners across the state to build out our climate strategy, we're cognizant of the tension that can exist between growth and climate change. But we believe that Michigan stands at the forefront of the fight against climate change. We're one of the top producers of engineers in the country. We lead the country in energy sector job growth. We're a top 10 state for patent creation and registered apprenticeships. But we will need educated talent to reach our climate goals. Everything we've heard so far from Eagle and the DNR, those goals are going to take top talent to reach. And I think that's just another great example of how our goals are interconnected and reliant on each other. Next slide. We're not the only state to be dealing with population loss. 34% of states are seeing population stagnation right now. And the Sun Belt, surprisingly, is experiencing growth despite, heightened climate risk that they have. This might not always be the case, but for now, this is our reality. Next slide. And through our polling and public engagement that I've spoken about, we've learned a great deal about what young people are seeking in the places they call home, and communities that are doing something about climate change continue to be, a mainstay in their feedback. They want to live in places that care about climate change. Next slide. Climate change remains a top 3 concern for both younger generations behind cost of living and unemployment. This data was taken from the Deloitte Gen Z Millennial Survey that they do each year. Young folks are willing to leave companies that don't stand on business when it comes to climate change, and they'll do that for the cities that they live in as well. They're seeking something more. They're seeking more than just a job. They're seeking more than just like a trendy place to live. They really want to live in places that are purpose driven. Next slide, please. Excuse me. This is the feedback we received in our national poll. We polled over 6,000 18 to 34-year-olds across the country, and they told us they want to see more action in their communities in regards to climate change. They're seeking, like I said, purpose-driven communities to be a part of. And we wanted to know a little bit more. The national poll that we launched wasn't a climate-specific poll. We only had a few questions in there about climate change. And so we decided to deploy an additional pulse poll. Next slide, please. Thank you. We decided to keep polling to dig a bit deeper on these climate questions. And, what we found was regardless of race and educational level, age and income, over 1/3 of the respondents told us they think about climate change on a regular basis. And 58% told us that when they choose their next place to live, climate resilience is, at the top of that list. And so the work that we're doing to better understand what young people are looking for, amenities and transportation, education, and things like that, those things don't operate alone. And so we wanted to make sure that whatever we did in regards to our climate strategy wasn't operating on its own as its own silo. It's very much connected to the rest of the work that we do. Next slide, please. This is another one of the questions that we asked. We asked how strongly are each of the following concerns making you consider moving to a new location? And, young folks across the country have concerns about the conditions they're facing, and they're considering uprooting their lives to live in places that are doing something to mitigate these concerns. And, to make the decision to move, that's an emotional decision. It's not easy, but young people are telling us that wherever I go next, I want them to be focused on mitigating climate change. I want to feel safe. I don't want to have water access concerns. I don't want to be concerned about the air that I'm breathing. And so Michigan is uniquely positioned to kind of answer this call that young people seem to have. Next slide, please. we see Michigan's journey toward becoming a climate haven, as well as, the resilience and innovation required to getting us there, as interconnected. I've talked about that a couple times now, but interconnected not only to each other, but also to the Growth Office's mission. To usher in a collective mission, it will take a group effort. None of our offices can reverse net migration or mitigate climate change alone. I'm happy to dig deeper into any of this with any of you. We'll be releasing more of our insights later this fall. Daniel and I will be releasing a one-pager, a mini report, if you will, to really highlight all the work that's been done, all, the things that Eagle has spoken about, the DNR has spoken about so far, and how that is tied to our growth. But for the sake of time, I'd like to turn it over to Daniel Arini, the Michigan Healthy Climate Fellow, who's been instrumental in helping their growth office establish a climate strategy. Daniel.
Thanks, Olivia. So overall, thinking about these questions about like climate change and how they relate to talent attraction, a lot of times it came up as Olivia was talking about like are these mutually exclusive concepts, or can we merge them together somehow? And we think we can bring those together in a productive way that is sustainable and productive for our state going forward. So with my fellowship, I'm really thinking through these questions and laying the groundwork for future fellows coming in to continue iterating on our climate strategy as a growth office to really help bolster the growth of the state in a sustainable way. Next slide, please. So talking about how we got here over the course of the past few months, I've been in the fellowship and I've been learning a lot about various climate initiatives that have been going on throughout the state and gaining perspective on how we can unify our efforts to really usher in more climate action and do that way that also encourages growth in terms of our population. So I've been conducting the various climate surveys that we showed earlier, the national poll, the pulse poll, as well as my own climate survey I did at the My Healthy Climate Conference, for example. By the way, if you filled that out, thank you so much. Appreciate you. And it also comes to our database stats. I've been compiling over 70 and counting different opportunities and assets that are related to climate in Michigan that we can uplift and show the rest of the world and nationally all the amazing work that we're doing and really showcase all the exciting change makers that are really making a positive impact throughout our state. I've also been interviewing various stakeholders in government, nonprofit organizations to get understanding on the ground what is going on with climate and how they see the state of play at this point and how the growth office can best support them. And finally, I've just been doing a lot of research in different articles as well as different releases like on Bridge Michigan and other news outlets to see like how is Michigan being perceived across the country, and so how we can lean into that or change it up, and we see how we can move forward from there. Next slide, please. So I'll focus on for this presentation some main projects I've been working on. We have our climate website we've been tinkering around with, as well as some climate opportunity tours, and finally some university focus groups I've been putting together to evaluate both of these ideas and help the future fellows coming in really run with these ideas going forward. Next slide, please. So before I get into that, I'd like to focus on Michigan's climate brand. We talked about like old and cold perception before, but I think climate change really can lean into that in a way that is optimistic and action oriented and shows the state as a leader in climate and do that in a way that is welcoming and provide a solutions-based approach to this rather than like fear mongering and all this. We can lean into all the positive work that is being done to highlight the existing work and increase the number of coalitions that we have and the work between them to really usher in the new climate era for ourselves. And also with this brand, we're really hoping to speak to people's day-to-day needs and stories, whether it be installing a heat pump at someone's house to improving green spaces like Michigan the Beautiful is doing, for instance. Those are all great things we can uplift and show the rest of the world. And finally, showcasing some real world opportunities that people can get involved with, like the workforce challenges that we have, providing new people into the fold when it comes to becoming solar techs or wind techs, and like uplifting that going forward. And also, most importantly, prioritizing resource conservation and diversity, equity, inclusion. I was recently part of a listening session out of New Lab Detroit. We were talking to Detroit youth about various green space access issues that they may be facing. And one thing that really stood out to me was how they really emphasize the need to make Michigan, like not just advertise it as beautiful, but how can we make it even more beautiful for more people? And I think that's a great challenge to take on, an exciting one as well to highlight for the rest of the world and bring more people into the fold as we usher in a new climate era. Next slide, please. So getting to the climate website now, I've been building this out over the past couple of months, and here's some core elements of it, and I'd love some feedback on it going forward. So first, we really like to highlight the stories and statistics that Michigan has going for it when it comes to being a climate leader, and using this website as a means to be a front door to the rest of the world to invite them to highlight our existing work and involve them in creating a new climate resiliency hubs, if you will, so that we can move forward with climate. And also visualizing Michigan's climate ecosystem and providing a map in which we can show people which organizations are within Michigan, how they connected to each other, and provide pathways in which they can see which organizations are providing certification programs and to connect those to hiring employers so that way they can readily see how they can get into the climate workforce and excel in Michigan's green industry. And then finally, providing some ways to drive engagement with Michigan climate action, like whether it be like joining our email list or looking at some climate stories or providing career technical assistance with like Michigan Works, for instance, and helping them navigate green career pathways so they can also land a green career. Next slide, please. So why even have a climate website? It's really to provide a unified platform to merge town relocation with Michigan's climate brand to other peer states. And that really wasn't the case. You either had like a climate website or town relocation, but not both. So I think Michigan can be unique with this sort of platform. And also provide a way in which Michigan's climate opportunities can be even more accessible to talent. You don't have to scour dozens of websites to figure out what's going on in Michigan. You have a centralized consumer-facing portal in which they can access job opportunities and community events they can get engaged with and get involved with. And finally, this is more longer term, but I like to throw out here anyway, is provide a forum to connect environmental and economic development organizations to grow Michigan's green industry and really cultivate that climate leading stance throughout the rest of the country and make it known that we're making a splash in climate. And with this, I'm expecting by the end of my fellowship to create a splash page for the website going forward. Next slide, please. Here's a couple images from the climate website. Here's just a preview of it. I did my best in Canva to make it happen. I'm working with a vendor to improve this going forward. But you can see here we have statistics showing all the amazing work that is going on in Michigan. We're kind of calling it Move on Climate, Move to Michigan, and providing several calls to action that people can get involved with, like how to get into advocacy in Michigan, showing off our climate stories, and providing pathways in which they can see themselves being in a climate career. Next slide, please.
Daniel, sorry to interrupt you. Just wanted to give you a time update. I think we've got maybe 4 minutes that'll let us reserve about 5 minutes at the end to wrap up.
Sure thing, that's all I need. So then also we have our core elements for my other idea, which is climate opportunity tours. This is really an idea to show people what we're about in person when it comes to economic development opportunities, providing travel itineraries so they can visit the state, seeing what sort of climate employers are around and how they can get on the ground experience with them, providing a filterable tour directory online so they can see which tours are being offered by which organizations, and providing organizations a template to offer these sorts of tours to incoming residents or visitors to the state, and they can leverage those opportunities. Next slide, please. In terms of the why this for idea, it really comes down to people seriously considering a move to Michigan would like to visit at least once. And our research shows that if they come visit Michigan, they're much more likely to stay in Michigan over time. And it's also a great immersive way to engage town beyond cold calls or just various website applications. And provides potential to create cohorts of talent so they can build camaraderie and shared interest in Michigan's climate offerings. And by the end of the fellowship, I expect to create a concept brief to evaluate this idea. Next slide, please. So finally, just with the university focus groups, we're going to evaluate both of these ideas by surveying 18 to 34-year-olds across 8 universities and colleges throughout the state. And we'll have 10 focus groups. 2 of those might be with my Climate Core Fellows. And we'll do this in mid-September, and they'll receive a gift card for participating. And we're in the process of coordinating this right now with university stakeholders. Next slide, please.
And
finally,
Daniel,
just
sorry to hop in
since
here. I think the slides, maybe it's just on my end. The slide I'm seeing is still the climate website core elements. I'm not sure who's running the slides. Or it might be like 4 slides behind.
It looks good in the room.
Okay, maybe it's just
It
on
looks
my
good
end.
for me.
Okay, it's just for me
on,
then. Sorry, please keep going.
No worries, it's my last slide. So since I have the floor, I wanted to bring up just like a longer term vision, some food for thought as we move forward as a growth office in this space of climate. And as we're really thinking about convening a statewide roundtable of community organizations and local government representatives to really lean into climate adaptation in addition to climate mitigation. So that way we could think about long-term strategies we can incorporate climate migration into that and really help bolster our state both climatically and from a population perspective. And that's all I have. The next slide. Thank you. Ready to take questions?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Daniel and Olivia, for this presentation. There's been a lot of conversation about the intersection between economic development and climate action. So it's really nice to see all the thought that's gone into this in Michigan. Let's take a minute. Are there questions for Olivia and Daniel, starting with Peck?
Yeah, I love what you guys just showed us. And you probably know the University of Michigan is making a big effort in Detroit to focus on the exact same thing and really put a lot of effort into making Michigan a more desirable place to attract talent. One thing though, that I'm getting out of my colleagues over in the business school is when it comes to talent, it's not just a beautiful place to live and like you say, a place that inspires young youth, with climate action and such, but we really got to work, as you show, Olivia showed, we got to really work on our educational opportunities in the state, not just at the high end university level, but for all Michiganders. So I just wonder if there's a way that you can use the state government to make that a priority over on the education side. You know, and a lot of it is storytelling. It's not, you know, obviously the governor has some great initiatives with K through 12, mainly preschool, but also the whole idea of everyone goes to a community college or a university. We should be playing up the fact that most people who can go to a community college can also transfer to one of our great four-year universities and colleges. And we just got to get the messaging right. And it just seems like we're not doing that. It's an take advantage of it.
Thanks, Beck. We have maybe time for a brief response to that, and then we'll transition to wrapping up. I don't know, Daniel or Olivia, if you had any response on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's something we think about often. And it isn't just one thing. And I think that's why, the council didn't just focus on education or just focus on place. We know that young people obviously want great jobs, but they also want kind of the full package. But in regards to education, from our perspective, right now, we're working on kind of what we're going to be doing in education in the next year. One aspect that has come up to us many times is the idea of the role of teachers and what that role looks like today versus 20, 30 years ago. And so we're really trying to look at teacher workforce development from the time that they decide they want to be a teacher at the university level, what that education looks like and what that looks like when they get into the classroom and continuing to support them. There are many things I could say about it. I'd love to talk more about this. But yeah, I really appreciate the sentiment.
Barry, do you have a very quick question?
Less a question, more a comment, just places where these conversations can show up. I'm thinking ahead to New York Climate Week, Recess 24 conference that's being put on next month. But I echo what was already said by Peck. I think this is fantastic that this is a focus and definitely an area we should, in our Midwestern way, humbly lean into. So thanks for all the work here.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Well,
thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And I will hand it over now to Director Roos to close us out.
Okay, great. I'll just wrap us up quickly. Big thanks to the Growth Office, Daniel and Olivia for the presentation, and DNR, Scott and Sarah. Just some great work happening in other parts of state government with pretty far-reaching positive impact and well synced to the work that we're doing here. I was going to leave a little time for some other broad discussion, but I think we're right at time. Just let everybody know that our next meeting is Tuesday, November 12th. From 1 to 3. That's going to be our last meeting of 2024. We'll be voting to approve the 2025 meeting schedule at that time, and we'll get a draft version of that schedule to you well in advance of the meeting. For those who are tracking this, have been watching, meeting materials and other resources can be found at michigan.gov/climate. And written comments can be submitted via email to eagle-climatesolutions, all one word, at michigan.gov. I thank you all for your being part of this and all the fruits of the great work that you did in helping to advise on putting the climate plan together. You can see them starting to really show up in action and impact. Thanks for everybody being part of this. Have a great rest of your day.